My name's Maureen Mulligan. Where did we look? And I'm the Georgetown County environmentalist. I was kind of the person that kind of took this and ran with it. The Brownfields program is a really awesome program. We really need community input on what we're going to do. We want this to be a program that benefits most of our community. So the more people that can find out about this, the better. We're working with Terracon. They're the consultants that we have contracted with to do this work. And they're going to give you a nice little talk about brownfields. So with that, I'll leave it to Pat.
Thanks, Maureen. My name is Peyton Smith with Terracon.
And I'm Patrick Homan with Terracon. Want to thank everyone for joining us. This is our second community meeting for the Georgetown County Brownfields Assessment Grant. Just wanted to, have this meeting to kind of get everyone familiar with what the grant is, what the grant's goals are, what we're hoping to achieve in this grant. And like Maureen was saying, one of the big goals of this grant is to get community volunteers or input as far as suggesting properties that we can use some of this Brownfields grant money to assess. And then also want to stir some interest for people that want to serve on the county steering committee as well. But we'll talk about that in a little bit in the presentation here.
Yeah, so we thought it would be a great idea for those in person and online first to just go through a few quick examples of what a brownfield is and what it might look like in your community. So let's start off with this one. So
this is a property that was assessed using under a different Brownfields grant. Is actually in the upstate of South Carolina. And if you put your contractor's hat on for a little bit, or if you put yourself in the place of a commercial developer looking at this property, what are the things you kind of think of when you're looking at this property? You probably see a couple hazards in that it used to be an old automobile center. The building looks to be in rough condition. Could have been unoccupied or vacant for a number of years. Potential environmental contaminants like potential underground hydraulic lifts. There's a tank you can see in one of the photos there. Other hazards like lead paint, asbestos could be in the building, things like that. So if you're a commercial developer, you look at this property and probably think, oh, it's going to cost, a substantial amount of money to address those hazards, to get this property redeveloped into something beneficial, to the community. Essentially, with this Brownfields grant money that we have, we address those environmental contaminants or environmental hazards up front by performing assessments at the property, which then, we hope to lead into getting properties like these redeveloped into something beneficial for the community. So this particular example, this one was redeveloped into a CrossFit gym. So that's one example of a brownfields. There's multiple examples of brownfields properties all across in every community, essentially. I have another one here. So, this might not look like a typical brownfields property like the one we showed you on the last slide. This is essentially a vacant grassed area, but this can also be considered a brownfields property, essentially in that there could be subsurface hazards or landfill material buried beneath this property that might be keeping this property from getting redeveloped. Again, using Brownfields funds, we can assess properties like this, address any potential environmental, contaminants or issues, manage those accordingly, and get it redeveloped. In this case, redeveloped into a university center. And then this last building is more of a, probably a typical, I'll say, textbook brownfields facility that you might see vacant, in rough condition, and hazardous materials, asbestos could be inside this building that would need to be removed prior to redevelopment. So this site was able to be redeveloped into the Pickens Railway structure as well.
Yeah, I think we wanted to show a wide variety of different types of brownfields there and give you the idea of sometimes it's not what it always looks like. In that case, a greenfield, it could have been much more contaminated than something like this, where it obviously looks like it could be potentially contaminated, but something like this might just be in an older structure where a greenfield like this could, be hiding a lot more under the surface. So I think that really gets us to the point of what is a brownfield, what's the real definition, and what do they look like in your community. So with that, here's our official definition. It's a real property, the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse, which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance. So I think a good way to describe this here is along the lines of what are the maybe the assumptions of the property? What is the reason behind it not being redeveloped? In this case, it's a beautiful, big, grassy, it's literally a greenfield right in downtown Charleston, but it's not being redeveloped, and that's immediately a telltale sign of a brownfield. So I think this is a wonderful, wonderful example to show as a brownfield because it is in such a valuable area and it's not being redeveloped. So some of the most common examples of brownfields, you got your vacant properties, your abandoned properties. Those are kind of the, the brownfields you would think of first, but you can also go to dry cleaners, gas stations, landfills, industrial properties, junkyards. In this case, it's a 1960s landfill that's kept this land from being redeveloped. But like we've said before, it doesn't always have to be contaminated. If there's just something that's preventing that site from being developed, if it's in a valuable part of your community, or you think that it would be a good site for redevelopment with an industry or commercial or something private, or maybe within the government, all of those can be defined as a brownfield. So with that, our overall goal within our county is to assess these brownfield properties and to remediate the environmental impacts and to spur redevelopment. So with that, just to give you a quick overview again of who is working together to make this happen, Terra Consultants is helping Georgetown County with this grant. A SECO group is also helping us with our community outreach. We're working with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department of Environmental Services as well. These are all, different groups that are helping us with this grant.
So I want to talk about one of the properties that we have begun assessing using some of these brownfield funds, and that's the, we call it the waste pit, or the former backhouse waste pit. It's the property located at 860 Aviation Boulevard in Georgetown. So it's the property that is currently the capped, waste pit from the former Georgetown Steel manufacturer. So when we first start assessing a property, the first thing that we do is we perform a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is essentially a report identifying any potential petroleum or hazardous materials that could be affecting the site or located at the site. So we had just finished our phase 1 environmental site assessment at this property. And we did identify hazardous material in the capped landfill essentially at the site. And then we're moving into kind of our second phase of conducting some soil sampling, groundwater sampling at this property, all in the hopes of getting to a point where we're able to remove this hazardous material from the site and get it redeveloped into something beneficial. And during our phase one process, where we look at a lot of historical documentation, things like historical topographic maps, like you see on the screen here, historical aerial images. This is actually a historic aerial image from 1983. So, we use these to help us identify what has been done on properties in the past. Looking here, you can see kind of in the center, the current waste pit that was located there at that time. And then also a little south of that, some former borrow pits or excavation pits, essentially, that we can identify just from looking at these historical aerial images.
Yeah, we wanted to show you an example of a little bit what we do behind the scenes of, yes, we're assessing these properties, but what does that mean? And having completed this preliminary, phase one inspection, we wanted to show you what exactly we look at to kind of, play detective for a second, put that hat on, and try to figure out what happened at this site to get it to where it is and what we need to do to possibly reverse that or prevent that from being further exposed. So these aerial photographs and topographic maps and all sorts of different historical documents and maps really help us piece together the story behind sites. So in this case, we thought this would be a good, example to show.
This is the second priority property that the county is looking to assess. It's the former Oneida textile mill site that's located up in Andrews, South Carolina. We haven't begun any assessment at this property yet. We are trying to reach out to the property owner to get their permission to start our assessment for this property. But, as you can see, this is a former textile mill. Potential hazardous materials located here could be asbestos or, chemicals used in the textile mill operations in the past. But using some of the Brownfields funds, we're looking to assess this property and eliminate or identify some of those hazards, and then make this property more appealing to potential redevelopers.
So this is the point in our process where we've got these two priority sites we're focusing on, but obviously this is a very large area and there are many, many sites that could be applicable as brownfields. And that's what I hope that the people who've joined us today can help us in our next steps, which is really to find more sites within the property in our census tract. So our census tract ranges from Georgetown all the way up to Andrews. It adds in some portions of Maryville and Spring Gully. And there's lots of opportunity throughout the census tract to examine properties. And Terracon, we can go out and find those properties, but it's our goal here to engage the community and to allow y'all to have the choice of what properties you would like us to assess. So at this point in our process, we are hoping that y'all will help us with this, join a steering committee and help us rank which sites are most important for us to assess. So we are currently taking applications for our steering committee. We already have a few applications, but we are welcoming more members. If you have any interest in joining whatsoever, this is your opportunity to be a direct advocate for your community, to help us prioritize which sites you would like us to assess and potentially apply for a cleanup grant in the future. And this is a great opportunity for your areas to really see some impacts from some funding. So this is your opportunity to be that advocate and to rank the importance of what you want your site to look like. And this goes directly hand in hand with kind of the timeline of this grant. And it's a 4-year program, and at this point, we're now trying to form that steering committee so we can decide which sites we want to assess, and then we can begin really assessing sites beyond these first 2 main sites. So if you have any interest at all in applying for the steering committee or have any questions about applying for the steering committee, our website is an incredible resource for you. We've got all sorts of different forms, applications if you're a property owner and you want to submit a site, or if you know of any sites. We just gave you some great examples of sites, and just driving around town, I could probably point out a few that would be great sites to assess. But if you know one that you'd really like us to assess, go ahead to the website, fill out one of the forms, or get more information from that website. So now we want to invite the Tika. Would you like to come up and talk a little bit about the community outreach you've done?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Thatika Robinson with the SECO Group, and have the opportunity to work with Terracon and the the county on this project. And so wanted to just, as community engagement has already been shared, one of the ways that we do engage the community, which can feel traditional, is by inviting you out to community meetings like this, where you can come be present and hear a presentation. But we also understand that we live in a different society now where so many things have our attention. And so we are asking that if there are any places or events or spaces where you know that people visit on a regular basis or spend time in on a regular basis in Georgetown area, Spring Gully, or Andrews, we ask that you share those with us so that we can meet the community where you are. We're happy to pop up at an event for you and give you information so that that takes one extra thing off your list. We're happy to attend a service and come share an announcement at your church service. We're happy to come to any other public events that you know of. But also we ask that you just continue to be engaged on social media, and also contact Maureen. She is our main contact for the project. So it is very important with community engagement that you're involved in the beginning. This is an intentional investment in this project to ensure that the community's voice is at the center from the beginning and not at the end when sites are chosen and cleanup starts to happen. And then the question is, well, we didn't know it was happening and what's going on in our community, and why'd you choose that building over that building? Well, that's why we're here. That's why we're hosting meetings for the community to be involved, because we do want to hear what's your most concerned spaces. For example, if you're in need of a space for gathering with your particular arts group or nonprofit, we want to hear about that. All of that goes into consideration as we look for locations or they're being shared. And when the assessments are done and Terracon's able to say this is a space that can be reused, then all of that comes into play when it's time to do the cleanup grants and make considerations for what this can be. So there is a process to all of it. It's not just inviting you just to come to a meeting, but we're trying to involve you in the beginning. And yes, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint, but we thank you in advance for watching and all the feedback that has been given for those that have submitted their applications to serve on the committee, as well as those who have come out to our first meetings, whether they were in Georgetown or in Andrews. We thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to getting to know you over the process of this grant. Thanks so much.
So that's the majority of the information we have for you. I can put the slide up at the end with our contact information if you have any questions, but first I wanted to allow you the opportunity to scan this QR code one more time, get access to our website. It has some great information on there. We keep it very updated with any news or updates. And once again, if you have any interest in applying for the steering committee or participating in any way, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us, and thank you so much. So the question is getting an update on the steel mill in downtown.
Yeah, if you have more of an update, because that is currently a privately owned.
Yeah, that was one of the things that the county actually has just taken possession of the port. And also, we've considered the steel mill that's privately owned. But we think that probably could get its own assessment grant because it's going to take a lot of money to do what we need to do there. Same with the port. So those two sites we're not really considering in this phase. But in the future, we're thinking about applying for separate assessment grants for those two sites. I have not really heard that much progress has been made in so far as getting, you mean like getting the steel mill to where they're no longer functioning? Yeah, I don't think that that's, as far as I know, it's not in the works anytime soon. So perhaps, yes.
Yep.
Thank you all again so much. Let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.